Have you ever felt like your mind is working against you, repeating thoughts you don't want, replaying moments you can't change, and drowning out the peace you're craving? You're not weak. You're not broken. You're human. And this is more common than you think. In today's world, stress, comparison, failure, and uncertainty hit harder than ever. Most men bottle it in. They try to tough it out. But inside, it's a war of noise, guilt, anger, doubt, regret. But what if your thoughts weren't enemies to fight, but signals to understand? Stoic philosophy believes that your mind can be trained, that clarity can be built, and that peace, real peace, doesn't come from avoiding problems, but from mastering how you respond to them. In this video, we'll walk through 7 powerful Stoic habits designed to help you clear out the mental clutter, regain control over your emotions, and build inner strength that no one can shake. You're not alone in this. You don't have to fake being okay, and you don't have to keep running from thoughts that hurt you. This is where it changes. So if you're ready to stop overthinking, let go of what's dragging you down, and finally take back your mental clarity, watch this video to the end. Like this video, subscribe for more timeless tools, and share it with someone who's silently struggling. Because your mind isn't the enemy, it's the starting point of everything. 1. Control what you can. Some mornings, you wake up already behind. The air feels heavy, not because of what's happened, but because of everything that could. You scroll your phone, check your email, and in those first few moments, a quiet sense of dread settles into your chest. The world feels too big, too loud, too out of control. And somehow it feels like your fault for not keeping up. That weight you carry? It's not just anxiety, it's the illusion that you should be able to control more than you can. One of the hardest truths for men to face, especially those who've spent their lives fixing things for everyone else, is this. Most of what burdens us isn't under our control. The job that didn't call back, the partner who won't communicate, the market shifts overnight, the way others perceive you. These are storms we try to steer, but they don't obey our hands. Stoicism offers a radical shift. It doesn't ask you to conquer the world. It simply asks you to reclaim your mind. Epictetus, once a slave who rose to become one of the most respected Stoic teachers, said it with perfect clarity. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. You may think that sounds too simple to matter, but simplicity doesn't make it shallow, it makes it strong. In fact, this might be the most liberating concept you've never fully embraced. Imagine a man standing in the rain, furious at the clouds for ruining his weekend plans. He curses the sky, kicks the puddles, and blames the weather for his mood. He can't change the storm, but he wastes all his strength trying to. Now, picture another man. He notices the clouds, nods at the rain, and quietly moves his gathering indoors. Same storm. Very different outcome. Negative thoughts are like those clouds. When we cling to the need for things to be different, when we demand that the world match our expectations, we suffer twice. First, from the event, and then from our refusal to accept it. You don't control the weather, the traffic, the economy, or how others behave, but you do control how you interpret, respond, and carry those moments. That's not weakness. That's where your real strength begins. This shift starts small. At work, a colleague dismisses your idea in front of others. You feel a wave of shame, then anger. Your first impulse may be to fire back or shut down, but pause. Ask yourself, is this something I can control? Can you control their opinion? Likely not. Can you control how you carry yourself in that moment? Completely. Choosing not to respond emotionally doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've stepped into a higher level of self-command. The kind of command that silences spiraling thoughts and anchors you in clarity. The mistake many men make is believing they must control outcomes to feel at peace. So they push, manipulate, worry endlessly, and exhaust themselves chasing illusions of control. When things go wrong, they blame themselves or others. They let their thoughts spin into worst-case scenarios and self-criticism, not because they're weak, but because they're aiming their strength in the wrong direction. What Stoicism teaches, what it trains, is that control isn't about domination. It's about discernment, about learning to spend your limited energy only on what truly belongs to you. Let's say your teenage son ignores your advice. You've repeated it 10 times, and still he chooses his own path. You lie awake, frustrated, helpless, replaying the argument. But again, can you control his decision? No. Can you control your own example, your patience, your values? Always. The peace that Stoicism offers doesn't come from passivity. It comes from precision, from learning to hold your ground only where your feet matter, and letting go where they don't. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, faced betrayal, war, plague, and personal loss. Yet in the midst of all that chaos, he reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You don't need more control over life. You need deeper trust in your ability to respond wisely to it. This week, try one simple but powerful habit. When you feel the pull of frustration, disappointment, or worry, pause. Ask, is this within my control? If yes, take clear action. If not, practice letting go. You'll find that many of your negative thoughts dissolve not by solving problems, but by refusing to carry what was never yours in the first place. You are not here to fight the wind. You are here to adjust your sails. And when you learn to do that, even in silence, your mind begins to clear. Your focus sharpens. You become the calm, not the chaos. The anchor, not the wave. That is where Stoicism lives. And that is where your peace begins. 2. Think before you react. A single sentence can ruin an entire day, not because of what was said, but because of how quickly we let it take root. You might be walking into a meeting, calm and prepared, when someone mutters a careless comment under their breath. It wasn't meant to be loud, but it landed. Your chest tightens, your face burns, your thoughts spiral. Was that about me? What did they mean by that? And before you know it, your mind is no longer where your feet are. This is the danger of instant reaction. When we let emotion leap ahead of reflection, we give our peace away without a fight. In a world that rewards speed, instant messaging, instant judgment, instant response, pausing feels unnatural. But the stillness you avoid might be the very thing that saves you. Stoicism invites you into that stillness, not to suppress what you feel, but to understand it before it speaks for you. Because reacting without awareness isn't a strength, it's surrender. And over time, it feeds a cycle of negative thoughts that reinforce themselves with every unchecked word, every impulsive reply. You're not just reacting to the present, you're reacting from the past, from years of unresolved feelings, buried disappointments, unspoken expectations. That's why a small comment hits like a punch. It doesn't hurt because it's sharp. It hurts because it finds something raw inside you. Now, imagine approaching that same situation differently. You hear the same comment, you still feel the tension, but instead of charging into it, you inhale slowly. You say nothing. You let the space between stimulus and response widen, just enough to let your mind catch up with your heart. That silence isn't weakness, it's restraint, it's mastery. The Stoics saw this as the mark of a trained mind. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But adversity doesn't always look like war. Sometimes it looks like a conversation that didn't go your way, or a message you didn't expect, or a tone of voice that reminds you of every time you felt dismissed. Thinking before you react means reclaiming your presence. It means not allowing the actions of others to dictate your emotional state. When you hold back, not out of fear, but out of clarity, you protect your focus, your energy, your dignity. This isn't easy, especially for men who were taught to speak up, stand their ground, and never back down. But reflection doesn't mean backing down. It means choosing a response that reflects who you are, not just how you feel in the moment. So what does that look like in practice? Start by watching your own patterns. Notice what triggers your frustration. Pay attention to how fast you respond when you feel threatened, ignored, or misunderstood. Then, interrupt that pattern. Take a pause, just 3 seconds. In those seconds, ask yourself, is what I'm about to say coming from clarity or from wounded pride? If it's the second, wait. Write it down instead. Take a walk. Return to the conversation with a steadier breath. The words you withhold today may be the ones that preserve your peace tomorrow. The mistake we often make is assuming silence equals defeat. If we don't respond right away, we'll lose respect. But Stoicism flips that belief. It says that true respect begins when you stop being controlled by every external pressure, when you learn to be still while others rush, calm while others provoke, measured while others explode. This kind of control doesn't shout, it doesn't try to win, It simply stands where it knows it belongs. A man who thinks before he reacts is a man who can lead, protect, and endure without losing himself. He doesn't fight every battle. He doesn't need to be right every time. He saves his energy for the things that matter. And in doing so, he becomes unshakable. This week, give yourself the gift of pause, just that. One pause before responding to something that stirs you. It might be in traffic, in a meeting, or in a moment of disagreement at home. You'll feel the pull to defend, to correct, to snap. But instead, breathe. Let the emotion rise, acknowledge it, and watch it pass like a wave. You don't have to ride it. You don't have to drown in it. You only have to remain standing. Over time, this pause becomes your protection. It becomes your power. And your thoughts, those old familiar storms, start to quiet because they're no longer fed by reaction. In that space, you'll find clarity. In that clarity, you'll find peace. Not because life got easier, but because your mind got stronger. And that is the Stoic way. Not to fight every storm, but to become the sky that holds it. 3. Practice dispassion. A man stands in traffic. Someone cuts him off without a signal, almost hitting his front bumper. For a split second, his knuckles tighten around the steering wheel, his jaw clenches. He hears that old voice again. How dare he? The urge to honk, to shout, to let the anger surge forward rises like a tide. But he doesn't move. He doesn't react. He exhales slowly and lets the moment pass. That is dispassion, not detachment, not apathy, but strength and stillness. Dispassion means choosing not to be ruled by every emotion that visits you. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop obeying every impulse. In a world where anger is mistaken for confidence and loudness is mistaken for leadership, choosing calm may feel like weakness. But what if it's the opposite? The Stoics believed that mastering your emotions is not about silencing them, but about understanding their place. Emotions are natural, but if they lead the way, they'll often take you somewhere you regret. Anger, envy, resentment, these aren't signs that you're failing. They're signs that you're human. The difference lies in how long you let them stay. Imagine watching a storm from a quiet porch. The sky rumbles, the wind shouts, rain lashes against the windows, but you remain inside, aware of it all, but untouched. Practicing dispassion is like that. You notice the storm, acknowledge it, but you don't step into it. This doesn't mean you become indifferent. In fact, Stoicism values deep empathy, but not reactive chaos. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary." Emotional reactivity is often premature suffering, feeling wounded before the real wound arrives, if it ever does. Dispassion gives you the space to respond with reason rather than reflex. It allows you to ask different questions. Instead of, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin to ask, "What part of this is truly mine to feel?" Many men believe that feeling intensely is a measure of depth, that to be affected is to be real, but pain without perspective becomes bitterness. Reaction without reflection becomes destruction. We've seen this in boardrooms, in marriages, in fathers and sons. Words said too quickly, doors slammed. Respect was lost in a moment that didn't need to happen. The common mistake is thinking that if you don't explode, you've lost. That if you don't defend your pride instantly, someone's taken something from you. But what Stoicism teaches is that no one can take your peace unless you hand it to them. So, how do you live this? Start in small places. When your partner forgets something important, when your coworker interrupts, when your child talks back. Notice the feeling rise, but don't follow it. Name it silently. This is frustration. This is an embarrassment. This is fear of being seen as small, and then let it pass without needing to react. Over time, this pause builds a quiet power. It doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. You begin to respond only to what matters and only when it matters. Marcus Aurelius, faced with betrayal, sickness, and war, still reminded himself each morning to meet each day's events with equanimity, a calm mind, not free from emotion, but guided by wisdom. He knew that the world would not stop challenging him. He trained himself not to react to everything as a personal attack. In modern life, the same challenge remains. We're bombarded with messages, opinions, judgments. Every social post, every email, every glance can feel like a provocation. But just because something lands in your mind doesn't mean it belongs in your heart. Dispassion is a filter. It lets you catch what's coming in and decide what stays. It helps you conserve your strength for the real fights, the ones that define your character, not the ones that drain it. And in this practice, you create space. Space for better thoughts, space for calm insight, space for the kind of man you're trying to become. One quiet action to begin with. The next time you feel insulted or dismissed, do nothing. Not out of fear, but out of confidence. Watch your mind want to react. Feel the pull of the old habits, then smile inwardly and let the wave pass. Later, if needed, respond, not with ego, but with clarity. This may feel unfamiliar, even unnatural at first. But as you do it more, you'll notice something remarkable. Your days get quieter, not because the world changed, but because you did. Your mind stops spinning with what others said, how they looked at you, or what you should have said back. That space is freedom. And in that freedom, you'll find fewer regrets, deeper presence, and a kind of grounded strength that others may not understand, but they will feel. This is not about never feeling. It's about never being ruled. It's about becoming the calm at the center of your own life. Dispassion is not detachment, it's mastery. And in a world that constantly tries to provoke you, not reacting is one of the most powerful things a man can do. 4. Accept that things change. The moment you try to freeze something beautiful, it begins to fade. A relationship, a career high, your own youth, it all slips faster the harder you try to hold it still. You can feel it most in quiet moments. When you stare at a photograph from years ago and realize that time didn't ask for your permission, it just moved. Change isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as subtle as a new line on your face or the silence in a house that used to echo with children's laughter. And while you may not name it, it's what stirs unease in your chest, the fear that what you once had may never return. That something is ending or has already ended, and you weren't ready. This resistance to change often hides beneath our negative thoughts. You feel anger, but deep down it's grief. You feel anxiety, but underneath is the dread of losing something familiar. That's why even small disruptions, like someone quitting your team or your favorite cafe closing, can trigger waves of sadness or irritability. The mind clings to what it knows, even when what it knows is no longer useful. Stoicism doesn't tell you to ignore change. It urges you to accept it as the nature of all things. Nothing in this life is fixed. Not your body, not your circumstances, not even your identity. To pretend otherwise is to fight against the current of life itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." That's not poetic optimism, it's practical liberation. Change is the current that carries you forward. What creates suffering is not the current, it's the fight against it. You might believe that if you accept change, you're giving up, that letting go means you didn't care enough. But in truth, resistance doesn't protect love or meaning or identity, it suffocates them. Letting things evolve allows them to be fully themselves, even as they pass. Think of a man who's lost his job after 20 years. The role gave him purpose, structure, and pride. Without it, he feels empty. But that job was never who he was. It was only how he expressed himself in a chapter of life. The man remains, and what he brings to the next chapter is not what he had, but who he became. When you accept that things change, you stop fearing the unknown, because you begin to trust your capacity to meet it. You realize your power isn't in holding on to what was, but in responding with grace to what now is. Negative thoughts often come from the mind replaying what should have stayed. But Stoicism teaches you to look at change without flinching, to see endings not as failures, but as necessary transitions. In practice, this starts with perspective. When something shifts, pause and say to yourself, this is what change feels like. Not as an excuse, but as a reminder that you're not broken. You're adjusting. When an argument shakes your relationship, when you notice your body aging, when your children stop needing you the same way, acknowledge the discomfort without trying to force it back. Let the moment be what it is. Then ask, how can I walk forward from here? The mistake many make is trying to rebuild the past in the present. They chase the old feeling, the old routine, the old role. But the more you try to repeat, the more stuck you feel. The Stoics remind us that peace comes not from recreating, but from reorienting. You can love what once was without needing it to return. You can be proud of who you were without resisting who you are becoming. This mindset also allows you to appreciate the now more deeply. When you truly accept that nothing lasts, you stop taking it for granted. You look at your spouse differently. You call your father just to hear his voice. You take in the quiet of your morning coffee like it's the last of its kind. This is what the Stoics called negative visualization, imagining the loss of something not to cause despair, but to awaken gratitude. It's not morbid, it's motivating. It teaches you to love with urgency, to live with presence. Try this simple shift. When you feel a wave of sadness for what's changing, gently say, "Thank you for existing." Not everything stays, but what stays within you that grows, deepens, evolves. You don't lose time, you carry it, you become it. You are not meant to stay the same. The trees don't, the rivers don't, the stars don't. Why should you? Change is not your enemy, it's your teacher. Let it speak, let it speak, let it shape, let it pass through you without resistance. And in that surrender, you'll find a calm stronger than control. A quiet acceptance that no matter what leaves, no matter what ends, you remain, still breathing, still learning, still moving with life. And in this flow, negative thoughts lose their grip. Because your mind is no longer clinging to what was, but opening to what could be. 5. Practice gratitude. Mornings have a strange way of revealing what we take for granted. You wake up, the light filters through the curtains, the water runs warm, coffee steams quietly in your favorite mug, the house is still. These moments pass unnoticed, buried under to-do lists, news headlines, and that quiet pressure to do more, be more. But the truth is, peace rarely arrives with fanfare. It slips in silently through the smallest details. And gratitude is what makes you notice. Gratitude isn't a feeling reserved for rare occasions. It's not something you wait to feel. It's something you choose to practice. And in practice, your perception changes. Not instantly, not dramatically, but steadily, like a fog lifting. Most people misunderstand gratitude. They see it as a soft emotion, something passive. But it's not softness, it's a strength. Because choosing to be grateful in the face of difficulty takes inner power. It takes discipline to look at what's missing and still find what remains. The Stoics didn't teach gratitude as a feel-good gesture. They taught it as a daily, conscious act of attention. Epictetus reminded us, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." That's not about denial. It's about focus. Gratitude isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about realizing not everything is lost. You may find yourself weighed down by thoughts of failure or regret. You think about the deal that didn't go through, the argument that pushed someone away, the choices you wish you could take back. And that spiral begins. I always mess this up. Why can't I? Gratitude interrupts that spiral. Not by offering false hope, but by pointing you to what is still real, still solid, still worth returning to. Let's say your business is struggling. You feel pressure rising in your chest as bills pile up and results fall short. That voice returns, "I'm not good enough." But beneath that stress is something else, a family still cheering for you, a skill set you've built over the years, the courage to try again tomorrow. Gratitude reminds you of those pieces. It rebuilds your foundation when your confidence shakes. This is why Stoics used a technique called negative visualization. It sounds dark, but it's not about fear. It's about clarity. You imagine losing something you care about, not to wallow in loss, but to sharpen appreciation. You picture life without your morning walks, without your brother's voice, without the freedom to choose your path. And suddenly, what once felt ordinary becomes sacred. You hold it with both hands. Gratitude works because it shifts your attention. It doesn't erase pain, but it makes space for joy to live alongside it. Even in grief, you can say, "I'm grateful I had them at all." Even in exhaustion, I'm grateful I still have the strength to care. And in uncertainty, I'm grateful for the chance to rebuild. Many men fall into the trap of conditional gratitude. I'll be thankful when I make 6 figures, when my marriage is better, when I feel confident again. But waiting for life to meet your expectations before you allow yourself to feel grateful is a trap. Because expectations shift, and the goalposts move. Meanwhile, the good in your life goes unnoticed, unacknowledged, unfelt. This kind of blindness breeds negativity. It keeps you stuck in what's wrong. The Stoic sees differently. He trains himself to notice what's right, not just on holidays or in highlight moments, but daily, especially on hard days. You can begin this today. Tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 specific things you are grateful for. Not generic ideas like health or family, but moments. A smile from your daughter, a deep breath before a difficult call, the fact that your heart is still beating. These aren't small things. These are your life. If you do this for 1 week, your focus will begin to shift. Not dramatically, but undeniably. Your thoughts will be less about what you lack and more about what you still carry. Your mornings will feel quieter. Your days will feel fuller, not because they changed, but because you did. Gratitude is the antidote to bitterness, to envy, to self-pity. It is the steady hand that pulls your mind back from chaos. And it doesn't need perfect conditions to grow. It only needs your attention. You don't need to fake joy. You only need to be honest about what still matters. As Marcus Aurelius put it, do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess. Your mind is always counting. Train it to count what counts. In the end, gratitude is not about being cheerful. It's about being awake. Awake to the reality that you are still alive, still capable of love, of thought, of change. That alone is worth pausing for. So pause now. Breathe. Look around, and let the simple fact of this moment be enough. Even here, even now, there is something to be grateful for. Let that be your beginning. Let that be your return. 6. Build your resilience. Some storms don't pass quickly. They linger, stretch across weeks, sometimes months. A diagnosis, a divorce, a long stretch of unemployment. It's during these seasons that most people begin to lose themselves. Not because the pain is unbearable, but because they believed it would be brief. And when it's not, when the hardship outlasts hope, the mind turns against itself. That's when negative thoughts grow loudest. Maybe I'm not strong enough. Maybe this will never end. Maybe I'm the problem. But what if strength isn't what you thought it was? What if it isn't the absence of struggle, but the quiet capacity to stand again and again despite it? Resilience isn't a force. It's not about pushing through until you break. It's about bending without snapping, adapting without losing yourself, enduring without growing bitter. The Stoics saw resilience not as something you were born with, but something you built, brick by brick, thought by thought, through lived experience. They didn't ignore pain, they transformed it. Marcus Aurelius faced war, betrayal, illness, and personal loss. Yet in his private writings he reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He didn't run from hardship, he used it as a training ground for the soul. In modern life, resilience often looks different. It's waking up the day after rejection and choosing to try again. It's holding your ground during a season of failure, not because it feels good, but because giving up would cost your dignity. It's feeling the sting of regret and still choosing to build a better version of yourself from it. But most people wait to feel strong before they act strong. They wait for the moment they don't feel anxious or sad or broken. That moment rarely comes. What the Stoic path teaches is that action can come first, that your strength is not proven in how you feel, but in what you do despite how you feel. Imagine a man going through financial collapse. He loses the business he built for decades. He feels shame, fear, the echo of every mistake. And yet instead of disappearing into despair, he calls a friend. He takes a walk. He begins again. Not because it's easy, but because he knows the alternative leads nowhere. That is resilience. Not perfection, but forward motion. Not constant confidence, but a quiet refusal to quit. The mistake many make is thinking resilience must be loud or visible. But real resilience is often quiet. No applause, no fanfare. Just a man breathing through discomfort, making the call he's been avoiding, showing up even when he'd rather hide. You can begin this today by choosing one hard thing and doing it. Not because you feel ready, but because your values demand it. Clean the garage you've neglected, apologize for the words you regret. Open the spreadsheet, return the missed call. These small actions signal to your mind, I'm still here. I haven't given up on myself. And when fear surfaces again, and it will, meet it like an old companion. Acknowledge it, then keep going. Fear isn't the enemy, stagnation is. Doubt isn't failure. Giving into it without trying is. The Stoics also knew that resilience isn't built alone. They valued community. They shared their writings not for praise, but to stay accountable. They leaned on others, not to be rescued, but but to be reminded they weren't alone in the fight. Modern men often isolate in their struggles. They wear masks of control, thinking vulnerability makes them weak. But sharing your pain with someone who listens is one of the most resilient things you can do. When you speak your fear aloud, it shrinks. When you name your sadness, it starts to loosen its grip. This doesn't mean telling everyone. It means finding one person who sees your worth, even when you don't, and letting that reminder guide you back to yourself. You can also build resilience through reflection. Each night, write down one thing you handled today that you once thought you couldn't. It might be a difficult conversation, or simply getting out of bed on a heavy morning. These are not small wins. These are your foundation, and every time you acknowledge them, you reinforce the truth. You are more capable than your negative thoughts suggest. Resilience doesn't mean you don't get tired. It means you keep walking, even with the weight. It means you give yourself grace when progress is slow. It means you fall, but land softer each time, because you know how to rise. This strength is not a gift. It's a decision, made daily, quietly, and often without witness. But over time, it changes everything. You stop fearing adversity because you know who you are within it. You stop feeding thoughts that say you're not enough because your actions say otherwise. Let today be a turning point. Let one simple act of courage mark your return to yourself. Maybe you won't feel brave. That's okay. Bravery is not a feeling, it's a pattern. And over time, that pattern becomes identity. And that identity becomes peace. So when the storm comes again, and it will, you won't need to fight it with panic. You'll meet it with presence, with breath, with resilience. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you've chosen to become. 7. Live according to your values. A man can have everything, status, wealth, success, but still feel lost if he lives out of alignment with what he truly believes. That quiet discontent, the one that whispers just before sleep or stirs during long drives, often has nothing to do with failure. It comes from forgetting who you are. Living according to your values means knowing what matters most and letting that knowledge shape your words, your choices, and our reactions. It's not about moral perfection. It's about inner congruence, where your private decisions match your public life and your actions reflect the kind of man you claim to be. Most people never pause to define their values. They move with the currents of culture, of pressure, of expectation. They say yes when they mean no. They stay quiet when they long to speak. Over time, this gap between inner truth and outer action creates noise in the mind, self-doubt, shame, regret. These aren't just emotional weights. They are signals, showing you where your life has drifted from your deeper self. The Stoics didn't chase goals the way the world chases them today. They chased virtue. For them, character wasn't a side project. It was the whole point. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." He wasn't preaching discipline for its own sake. He was showing a path back to peace through clarity and commitment. You might say you value honesty, but lie to keep the peace. You might say you value loyalty, but avoid the hard conversations. And slowly, your self-respect erodes, not because you failed, but because you drifted too far from what you once stood for. Living your values begins with identifying them. Not in theory, but in real terms. Not, I want to be a good person, but I choose integrity over comfort. I choose patience over control. I choose courage over silence. Values are not about who you want to impress. They're about who you want to become. This practice often starts in moments that seem small. Imagine someone insults you in public. Your instinct is to lash back, prove your worth, defend your pride. But if your value is self-respect, not public dominance, you stay calm. You walk away, not because you're weak, but because you've chosen to answer to something higher than your emotions. Or take another man, frustrated with his teenage son who disrespects him at the dinner table. Everything in him wants to explode, to demand obedience. But if he values empathy and restraint, he breathes, stays grounded, and responds without humiliation. In that moment, he honors who he is, not just who he's trying to control. The mistake many make is trying to live for results instead of for principles. They think peace comes from achievement. But the Stoics knew that true peace only comes from alignment. When your actions reflect your core values, even when no one sees, you experience something deeper than pride. You experience wholeness. Negative thoughts thrive in the space where we betray ourselves. That quiet voice that says, "You're not who you said you'd be," grows louder the longer we ignore it. But the beautiful truth is this: you can come back. Every day is a return to yourself. Every decision is a vote for the man you're building. Write your values down. Keep them somewhere you see often. Before hard conversations, before big choices, return to them. Ask yourself, will this action reflect the man I promised myself I'd be? You will not always succeed. You will fall short, speak harshly, and compromise when you wish you hadn't. But each time you notice, each time you choose differently, even a little, you come home to yourself. That's what matters. The Stoic path isn't about suppressing emotion or appearing perfect. It's about presence, about waking up to who you are and living it out, one moment at a time. This isn't flashy. No one may praise you for it. But over time, your mind grows quieter. The chaos of overthinking fades because your decisions no longer come from fear or approval seeking. They come from within. They come from what you know to be right. And when the storms of life come, and they always will, you won't be anchored in results. You'll be anchored in who you are. That kind of man is not easily shaken. He may hurt, but he doesn't crumble. He may fail, but he doesn't quit, because his actions are not for show. They are for theul. So tonight, return to your values, name them, commit to them, let them guide your next hard moment. And when your thoughts turn against you, ask not if you are successful, but if you are honest. Not if you are liked, but if you are kind. Not if you are perfect, but if you are real. That's where peace lives. Not in the applause of the world, but in the quiet alignment between your soul and your steps. Let that be the compass. Let that be enough. You've just walked through 7 Stoic practices, each one a quiet form of strength. These are not lofty ideals or abstract philosophies. They are daily disciplines, mental habits. Ways to reclaim your peace, your clarity, and your sense of purpose from the noise that fills modern life. When you control what you can, you stop wasting your strength on things that were never yours to hold. When you pause before you react, you build space for wisdom to guide your words instead of emotion. When you practice dispassion, you learn to carry storms inside you without becoming them. When you accept that things change, you stop fearing life's flow and start moving with it. When you practice gratitude, you train your mind to see what remains instead of what's missing. When you build resilience, you begin to trust yourself to survive and rise again. And when you live according to your values, you walk with integrity, even when no one is watching. These are not one-time choices. They are a way of living, a way of seeing, a way of thinking that slowly reshapes who you are and how you show up in this world. Let these practices become part of your morning, your silence, your choices. When you do, you'll find that the grip of negative thoughts begins to loosen, not because life gets easier, but because your mind gets stronger. And now, I invite you to reflect. Which of these principles spoke to you most? Which one do you need today? Share your thoughts or your journey in the comments below. Your story may be the light someone else needs right now. This is the work. This is the way. Quiet, steady, real. Let it begin with you, and let it begin today.